The camera footage showed something impossible. Blake Hartwell rewound it for the 5th time. His hands shook. What he was seeing couldn't be real. But there it was. His children. Walking. But that was 3 weeks from now. Right now, Blake didn't believe in anything. He stood at the kitchen window staring at the dried-up fountain in his $40 million prison. The coffee in his hand had gone cold hours ago. He didn't care. 2 years since Charlotte died. 2 years since the twins were born. 2 years of watching Jackson and Madison trapped in wheelchairs, unable to move, unable to speak. Cerebral palsy. Severe. Permanent. They'll never walk, Mr. Hartwell. The doctor said it like they were reading a grocery list. Cold, final, done. Blake had spent $43 million proving them wrong. Therapists from Switzerland. Equipment from Japan. Specialists from everywhere. All of them failed. All of them left with pity in their eyes and nothing in their hands. He walked past the playroom. Didn't look inside. He couldn't anymore. Jackson and Madison sat in their wheelchairs like they always did. Small, fragile, broken. That's what everyone saw. That's what Blake saw, too. The mansion had 23 rooms. He used 3. Everything else was just space between him and his failure. Charlotte used to fill this house with light. She'd laugh in every corner. She'd dance in the hallways. When the IVF finally worked and she got pregnant with triplets, Blake thought his life was complete. They lost 1 baby in the womb. Then they lost Charlotte during delivery. Blake survived, but surviving wasn't living. 6 months ago, he stopped attending the twins' therapy sessions. What was the point? Every session was the same. Exercises that didn't work. Progress that never came. Hope that turned to ash. He'd hired 11 caregivers. 11 failures. The first one quit after 2 weeks. Too heartbreaking, she said. The second spent more time on her phone than with the kids. One stole their medication. Another accessed his bank accounts. The rest just didn't care. Blake stopped trusting people. He installed cameras instead. Every room, every angle. He watched the footage every night from his office, looking for something he couldn't name. Tonight, he'd hire caregiver number 12, some woman named Maria, 29 years old, quiet resume, unremarkable references. She'd fail too. They all did. Blake drained the cold coffee and set the mug down. The sun was setting outside. The mansion grew darker, colder. He didn't know it yet, but Maria would walk through his door tomorrow, and everything he thought he knew about his children, about hope, about impossible things, all of it was about to shatter. Because in 3 weeks he'd sit in his office, watching camera footage that would break him into tears. His children would be walking, and he'd realize he'd been blind the entire time. Hey, welcome to the channel. I'm so glad you're here for this story. Before we go to chapter 2, do me a favor. Drop a comment and tell me what state or country are you watching from, and what's the weather like over there. I love connecting with you all. Let's build this community together. Now, are you ready to meet Maria? The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. Blake sat in the sterile hospital room holding Charlotte's hand. Jackson and Madison were 3 months old. Tiny. Helpless. Perfect. Then the doctor walked in with a folder. Severe cerebral palsy. Both twins. Blake's world stopped. Charlotte squeezed his hand so hard her nails broke his skin. He didn't feel it. The doctor kept talking. Muscle stiffness. Loss of motor function. Speech delays. Cognitive impairment. Will they walk? Blake asked. The doctor looked at his shoes. Highly unlikely, Mr. Hartwell. In cases this severe, walking is nearly impossible. Charlotte started crying. Blake felt nothing. Numbness swallowed everything. The doctor mentioned therapy, equipment, specialists, adaptive technology. Blake nodded but heard nothing. One word echoed in his head. Impossible. His children would never run, never play catch. I never chase each other down hallways, never dance at their own weddings. Charlotte had fought so hard to have these babies. 5 years of trying, failed IVF attempts that cost hundreds of thousands, the heartbreak every single month when the test came back negative. Then finally, success. Triplets. Blake remembered the day she called him at work, screaming with joy. "We did it, Blake. We're having 3 babies. They lost 1 in the 2nd trimester. The doctor said it happened sometimes with multiples. Blake and Charlotte grieved but held on to hope. 2 healthy babies. That's what mattered. Then delivery day came. Complications. Bleeding. Emergency surgery. Blake stood outside the operating room for 6 hours. When the doctor finally came out, his face said everything. "We saved the twins. I'm sorry about your wife." Charlotte died on the table. Blake held her hand as the machines went quiet. She never got to hold Jackson and Madison. Never got to see their faces. And 3 months later, Blake learned those babies she died for would never have normal lives. The guilt crushed him. If they hadn't done IVF, if they'd adopted instead, if he'd just been content with the life they had, Charlotte would still be alive, and maybe Jackson and Madison wouldn't be trapped in bodies that didn't work. Over the next 2 years, Blake tried everything. Specialists flew in from Germany, Australia, China. He bought every piece of equipment, hired the best therapists money could buy. $43 million spent. 0 progress. Jackson and Madison couldn't move beyond small reflexes, couldn't speak beyond sounds. I couldn't do anything the doctors said they'd never do. Every failed session felt like losing Charlotte again. Every therapist who left felt like another nail in the coffin of hope. Blake started pulling away. He couldn't watch his children fail anymore. Couldn't sit through another appointment where nothing changed. 6 months ago, he stopped going completely. He told himself it was better this way. Less painful. More realistic. But the truth was simpler. Blake had given up on his children. He just didn't know that someone was about to walk through his door who hadn't. Blake sat in his office the next morning going through Maria's background check for the 3rd time. 29 years old. Born in Mexico. Moved to the U.S. at 16. Worked as a caregiver for 8 years. References were fine. Nothing special. Nothing suspicious. She'd be here in an hour. Blake didn't expect anything. The last 11 caregivers had all seemed fine on paper too. Then they'd shown their true colors. Lazy, neglectful, greedy, mean. One had filmed Jackson having a seizure and posted it online for likes. Blake fired her on the spot and scrubbed the internet clean. Cost him $200,000 in legal fees. After that, he installed the cameras. 73 of them throughout the mansion. Every room, every angle, hidden in smoke detectors, picture frames, light fixtures. Nothing would happen in his house without him knowing. The doorbell rang. Blake walked downstairs. Maria stood on the porch, small frame, dark hair pulled back, simple clothes, calm eyes. She looked ordinary. They all did at first. "Come in," Blake said. His voice was cold, mechanical. Maria followed him to his office. And she didn't look around at the expensive art or the marble floors. She just walked quietly behind him. Blake sat behind his desk. Maria sat across from him. "The rules are simple," Blake said. "Follow the medical protocol exactly. No improvising. No therapy experiments. No bonding speeches. The doctors have made their prognosis clear. Do you understand?" Maria nodded. "I understand, Mr. Hartwell. My children are not a project. They're not inspiration. They're not something you'll fix with positive thinking." Blake's voice was sharp, hard. "Do your job. Keep them safe. Keep them comfortable. That's all. Of course, 11 caregivers have worked here before you. All of them failed. Some were lazy, some were cruel. One stole from me. I have cameras in every room. I watch everything. If you step out of line once, you're gone. Clear? Crystal clear." Blake studied her face. "No fear. No nervousness. Just calm acceptance. It bothered him. You start today. Mrs. Chen will show you where everything is. The twins are in the playroom. Maria stood. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Hartwell. She walked out. Blake watched her on the security monitor. She walked down the hall with Mrs. Chen, into the playroom. She saw Jackson and Madison in their wheelchairs. Blake waited for the usual reaction. Pity. Sadness. That look everyone gave when they saw his broken children. But Maria smiled instead. Not a sad smile. A real one. She knelt down in front of the twins, said something Blake couldn't hear through the camera audio. Then she did something no other caregiver had ever done. She looked at Jackson and Madison like they weren't broken at all. Blake's hand hovered over the keyboard. He told himself it didn't matter. She'd be like all the others. Give it 2 weeks and she'd quit or do something that got her fired. But something in his chest shifted. He didn't know why. Not yet. Blake watched Maria on the cameras for 3 days straight. She did everything by the book. Fed the twins on schedule. Changed them. Moved their arms and legs through the prescribed exercises. Nothing special. Nothing different. But something was off. Blake couldn't put his finger on it. She followed every rule, never improvised, never stepped out of line. Yet the twins seemed different around her. Jackson smiled more. Madison's eyes tracked Maria's movements across the room. Small things, meaningless things. Blake told himself he was imagining it. On the 4th day, he noticed something strange on the footage. Maria was singing, not loud. Not performance singing, just soft melodies while she worked. Spanish songs Blake didn't recognize. Her voice was gentle, soothing. The medical protocol said nothing about singing, but it didn't forbid it either. Blake watched Madison's face on the screen. The little girl was listening. Really listening. Her eyes were brighter than Blake had seen in months. He rewound the footage, watched it again. It meant nothing. Kids liked music. That was normal, but Blake kept watching anyway. By week 2, Maria had settled into a routine. She arrived at 7 every morning, left at 7 every night. 12-hour shifts. Never complained. Never asked for overtime. The other staff liked her. Mrs. Chen said she was respectful. The cook said she always thanked him for meals. The groundskeeper said she smiled at everyone. Blake didn't care what the staff thought. He cared about results, and there were no results. Jackson and Madison were the same. Wheelchair-bound, nonverbal, motionless. Exactly like the doctors said they'd always be. But one night, Blake caught something on camera that made him sit up straight. Maria was moving Jackson's legs differently. Not the prescribed exercises, something else. She'd lay him on the mat and move his legs in slow patterns, like she was teaching him to walk, like she believed he could. Blake's jaw clenched. This was exactly what he'd warned against. No improvising. No false hope. He grabbed his phone to fire her. Then he saw Jackson's face. The boy was smiling. Not the blank smile he sometimes made. A real smile. His eyes were focused on Maria's face. Engaged. Present. Blake's finger hovered over the call button. He didn't press it. Instead, he watched. Maria worked with Jackson for 20 minutes, moving his legs, bending his knees, stretching his muscles in ways that seemed almost like steps. Then she did the same with Madison. The whole time she talked to them, told them they were strong, told them they could do this, told them she believed in them. Blake's chest tightened. She was giving them hope. False hope. Dangerous hope. Hope had destroyed Blake once already. He wouldn't let it destroy his children too, but he didn't call her, didn't fire her, didn't stop watching. Because deep down, in a place Blake refused to acknowledge, something stirred. Something that felt like the beginning of belief. 3 weeks in, Blake's routine had changed. He used to watch the security footage once a night. Now he watched it 3 times, 4 times. Sometimes he'd rewind the same moments over and over. Maria working with the twins, Maria singing to them, Maria moving their legs in those strange patterns that looked almost like walking. Blake told himself he was watching for mistakes, waiting for her to slip up like all the others. But that wasn't true. He was watching because something was happening, something he couldn't explain. Jackson was making sounds he'd never made before. Not words, but sounds that had intention behind them, like he was trying to communicate. Madison's muscle tone seemed different, less rigid, more responsive. Blake pulled up the medical records, checked the therapy notes from 6 months ago, compared them to now. There were changes, small ones, barely measurable, but they were there. Impossible. The doctors had been clear. Severe cerebral palsy didn't improve. Not like this. Not without intensive medical intervention. Maria wasn't a doctor. She was a caregiver with a high school education and 8 years of experience. She couldn't be causing this. But Blake watched the footage again. Maria kneeling beside Jackson, moving his legs, whispering encouragement. Jackson's face bright and engaged. Blake's phone rang, his assistant. A meeting he'd forgotten about. "Cancel it," Blake said. "Cancel everything today." He hung up and kept watching. On the screen, Maria lifted Madison out of her wheelchair, held her upright, supported her weight while moving her feet in tiny stepping motions. Madison's legs moved. Just reflexes, Blake told himself, involuntary muscle responses. But Madison was smiling, her whole face lit up. Blake's throat went tight. He thought about Charlotte, how she'd dreamed of watching the twins play together, how she'd painted their nursery with stars and moons, how she'd read pregnancy books and planned their futures. She'd never stopped believing, even when the IVF failed over and over, even when they lost the third baby. She'd believed right up until the moment she died. Blake had buried that belief with her. Now Maria was digging it back up, and Blake didn't know whether to thank her or destroy her for it. He watched Madison take another tiny step, Maria's arms supporting her, Maria's voice encouraging her. "You're doing it, sweetie. You're so strong. I knew you could." Blake's hand curled into a fist. She was lying to them, giving them dreams they'd never achieve, setting them up for heartbreak. But Jackson laughed, an actual laugh. Blake heard it through the camera audio. He hadn't heard his son laugh in 2 years. Blake closed his laptop, stood up, paced his office. This was dangerous. Maria was dangerous. She was creating hope where there should be none. She was making Blake feel things he'd sworn never to feel again. He should fire her tonight. But tomorrow morning, Blake knew he'd be back in his office, back at his computer, back watching those cameras, because for the first time since Charlotte died, something in that house felt alive. Week 4 brought something Blake couldn't ignore anymore. He was in his office at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, watching the day's footage for the 3rd time. Maria had Jackson on the floor mat. She was doing those leg movements again, the ones that looked like walking practice. But this time something different happened. Jackson's leg moved on its own. Blake sat forward, rewound the footage, watched it again. There, Jackson's right leg. Maria wasn't moving it. He was. It was tiny, barely visible, a muscle twitch at most, but it was voluntary. Blake's hands started shaking. He rewound it again and again. Each time he saw the same thing. Jackson was trying to move his leg. The doctor said this couldn't happen. Severe cerebral palsy meant permanent loss of motor control. The neural pathways were damaged. They couldn't repair themselves. Blake had watched 17 specialists explain this to him, had read 43 medical journals, had consulted with the top neurologists in the world. They all said the same thing. Impossible. But Blake just watched his son move his own leg. He checked the timestamp. This happened at 4 in the afternoon, 7 hours ago. Blake pulled up the live camera feed. The playroom was dark, empty. Maria had gone home hours ago. He switched to Madison's room. She was asleep in her adaptive bed. peaceful. Then he switched to Jackson's room. The boy was awake, staring at the ceiling. His right leg was moving, just slightly, up and down, like he was practicing. Blake stopped breathing. Jackson was doing it on his own, without Maria, without help. Blake's chest cracked open. 2 years of buried grief came flooding out. He put his head in his hands and he wept. For Charlotte. For the time he'd lost. For the hope he'd killed. For his son who was trying to walk when the whole world said he never would. Blake didn't sleep that night. He watched Jackson until sunrise. The boy moved his leg on and off for hours. Small movements. Weak movements. But they were his movements. When Maria arrived at 7, Blake was waiting in the hallway outside the playroom. She saw his face and stopped. "Mr. Hartwell? Is everything okay?" Blake's voice came out rough, broken. "What are you doing to them?" Maria's eyes widened. "I don't understand. The leg exercises, the patterns, the way you talk to them." Blake stepped closer. "What are you doing?" Maria stood her ground. Her voice was calm. "I'm treating them like they're capable. The doctor said they'll never walk. Doctors are wrong sometimes." Blake's jaw clenched. "You're giving them false hope." Maria met his eyes. "I'm giving them real hope. There's a difference. You can't know that. You can't promise them something impossible." "I'm not promising anything, Mr. Hartwell." Maria's voice was steady, strong. "I'm just refusing to give up on them. Someone has to believe in them. And since you won't, I will." The words hit Blake like a fist to the chest. Maria walked past him into the playroom. Blake stood frozen in the hallway. She was right. He'd given up on his children. He'd buried them alive in his own grief and called it protection. Blake walked back to his office, pulled up the footage from the past month, watched every moment Maria had spent with the twins. She wasn't just a caregiver. She was fighting for them. Every single day. While Blake watched from behind cameras like a coward, he saw Jackson smile at Maria, saw Madison track her movements, saw both twins engage in ways they never had before, and he saw what he'd been too afraid to see. His children weren't broken. They were trapped, and Maria was trying to set them free. Blake's phone buzzed. A meeting. Investors from Tokyo, worth $300 million. He declined the call. For the first time in 2 years, Blake left his office and walked to the playroom. Maria was on the floor with Madison. She looked up when Blake entered. Her expression was guarded. Blake knelt down beside them. His daughter looked at him with wide eyes. "Can you show me?" Blake's voice cracked. "Show me what you've been doing?" Maria hesitated, then nodded. "She's been trying so hard, Mr. Hartwell. They both have. They just need someone to believe they can." Blake reached out and touched Madison's hand. She gripped his finger. It was weak. Barely there. But it was real. "I'm sorry," Blake whispered. To Madison. To Maria. To Charlotte's memory. "I'm so sorry. If this story is hitting you as hard as it's hitting Blake, show some love. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever given up on something you shouldn't have. And subscribe because this story is about to get even more emotional. Trust me. You don't want to miss what happens next." Maria started teaching Blake everything. How to move the twins' legs in those specific patterns. How to support their weight while keeping them upright. How to make them feel capable instead of broken. Blake was clumsy at first, his hands too stiff, his voice too uncertain. But Jackson and Madison responded to him anyway, because he was their father, and they'd been waiting for him to come back to them. That first week, Blake cleared his schedule completely. No meetings, no calls, no business. His assistant thought he'd lost his mind. His board of directors threatened to remove him. Blake didn't care. For 2 years he'd chosen his empire over his children. Not anymore. He spent every day in the playroom, learning, watching, trying. Maria worked beside him, patient, encouraging, never judging him for the time he'd wasted. On the 3rd day, Madison made a sound. Not a cry or a whimper, a sound that was almost a word. Blake's eyes shot to Maria. "Did you hear that?" Maria smiled. She's been trying to say Dada for a week now. Blake's vision blurred. He looked at Madison. Say it again, sweetheart. Please. Madison's mouth moved. The sound came out garbled, unclear, but Blake heard it. Dada. He scooped her up and held her against his chest. She was so small, so fragile, but she was trying so hard. I'm here, baby. Blake's tears fell into her hair. I'm here now. I'm not leaving again. Jackson watched from his wheelchair. His eyes were bright, alert. Blake put Madison down and went to his son. You too, buddy. I'm here for you too. He lifted Jackson out of the wheelchair. The boy's body was rigid, tense, but when Blake held him upright, supporting his weight, Jackson's legs moved, just tiny shifts. Testing, trying. Maria stood back, watching with tears in her eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, Blake saw things he'd thought were impossible. Jackson holding his head up for 30 seconds straight. Madison gripping a toy and shaking it. Both twins tracking conversations with their eyes, responding to voices, engaging with the world. But the real breakthrough came on a Tuesday night. Blake was working with Jackson, supporting him upright, moving through the patterns Maria had taught him, and Jackson took a step. One step. His right foot moved forward on its own, shaky, unstable, but real. Blake froze. Jackson, did you just... The boy's leg moved again. Another step. His face was scrunched in concentration, every muscle in his tiny body working. Maria, Blake shouted. Maria, come here. She ran into the room, saw Jackson taking another trembling step. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Blake's whole body shook. He supported Jackson's weight but let the boy's legs do the work. Another step, then another. 4 steps total before Jackson's legs gave out. Blake caught him, held him tight. You did it, buddy. You walked. You actually walked. Jackson made a sound, something like a laugh. His small arms wrapped around Blake's neck. Blake buried his face in his son's shoulder and sobbed. 2 years of grief poured out of him. 2 years of guilt and shame and failure, but also hope, real hope, the kind that didn't break, the kind that built miracles. Maria knelt beside them, her hand on Blake's shoulder. He did it, Mr. Hartwell. He really did it. Blake looked up at her. His face was destroyed. Thank you. God, Maria, thank you. Don't thank me. She smiled through her tears. Thank him. He's the one who fought for it. That night, after Maria left, Blake sat in the playroom with both twins. They were asleep in their wheelchairs. Peaceful. Blake thought about Charlotte. How she would have cried seeing Jackson walk. How she would have believed from the start. I wish you were here, Blake whispered. I wish you could see them. They're so strong, Charlotte. Just like you. The house didn't feel empty anymore. The silence wasn't crushing. For the first time since Charlotte died, Blake felt like he could breathe. His children were walking, against every odd, against every expert, and Blake had almost missed it. Almost stayed in his office watching life happen instead of living it. But not anymore. Never again. If you're crying right now, you're not alone. I'm crying writing this. Hit that like button if this story is touching your heart. Comment and tell me about a time someone believed in you when no one else did. And subscribe, because what happens next will absolutely shatter you. Blake's about to discover something on those cameras that changes everything. Blake started checking the cameras less. Not because he trusted Maria more, but because he was finally present. Finally in the room where life was happening, instead of watching it through screens. But old habits die hard. 3 nights later, Blake couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop, pulled up the day's footage. What he saw made his blood run cold. Maria was in the playroom, alone with the twins. It was late afternoon. The session Blake had missed because of an emergency call with investors. She had Jackson standing. His legs were shaking, but he was upright, supporting most of his own weight. Then Maria stepped back. She let go of him completely. Blake's heart stopped. Jackson would fall. He'd get hurt. What was she thinking? But Jackson didn't fall. As he stood there, wobbling, his little arms stretched out for balance, his face tight with concentration. Then he took a step, on his own, no support. Another step, then another. 5 steps total before Maria caught him. Blake rewound the footage, watched it again. Jackson had walked, actually walked, without help. Blake's hands shook so hard he could barely control the mouse. He fast-forwarded through the footage. An hour later, Maria did the same thing with Madison. Madison took 3 steps on her own before falling into Maria's arms. Both twins, walking independently. Blake's chest felt like it was caving in. This was impossible. The doctors had been so certain. 17 specialists, $43 million. All of them said the same thing. These children would never walk. But Blake just watched them do it. He checked the date on the footage. This was yesterday. Why hadn't Maria told him? Blake pulled up more footage, going back further. 2 weeks. 3 weeks. His stomach dropped. Maria had been training them to walk for over a month, long before Blake started paying attention, long before he came to the playroom. She'd been doing this the whole time, alone, in secret. While Blake watched his cameras looking for reasons to fire her, Maria had been performing a miracle. Blake slammed the laptop shut. He couldn't breathe. All those weeks, all that time he'd wasted. While his children were learning to walk, Blake had been hiding in his office, drowning in grief. He'd missed it. He'd almost missed all of it. Blake stood up, paced his office. His mind was racing. The cameras showed something else, too. Something Blake had been too blind to see. Madison's first word wasn't Dada like Maria had told him. It was Maria. Blake had watched the footage, seen Madison's mouth form the name, seen the joy on Maria's face. But Maria had lied. She'd told Blake that Madison was trying to say Dada. Let him believe he was still first in his daughter's world. She'd protected him, even when he didn't deserve it. Blake sank into his chair. His whole body felt heavy. Maria had given everything to his children. Her time, her belief, her heart. And Blake had given nothing, until it was almost too late. He pulled up the live camera feed. Maria's shift had ended hours ago. The twins were asleep. Tomorrow Blake would talk to her, would thank her properly, would figure out how to repay a debt that could never be repaid. But tonight, Blake did something he hadn't done since Charlotte died. He prayed, thanked God for sending Maria, for giving his children a chance, for not letting Blake's grief destroy everything, and he prayed for forgiveness, for all the time he'd lost, for all the moments he'd never get back. The camera footage continued playing on his screen. Jackson and Madison sleeping peacefully. 2 children who were supposed to be impossible. 2 children who were walking anyway. Blake was waiting in the playroom when Maria arrived the next morning. She stopped in the doorway, surprised to see him there so early. "Mr. Hartwell, is everything okay?" Blake stood up. His eyes were red from no sleep. "I watched the footage from 2 days ago." Maria's face went carefully blank. "Okay." Jackson walked, 5 steps on his own. Blake's voice cracked. Madison walked 3. Maria nodded slowly. "Yes, they did." "Why didn't you tell me?" Because I wasn't sure you'd believe it." Maria met his eyes. "And I didn't want you to take this away from them." The words hit Blake like a punch. "Take it away? You told me no hope speeches, no improvising, no believing they could do more than the doctors said." Maria's voice was calm but firm. "So I followed your rules in front of you, and I broke them when you weren't looking." Blake felt his throat close up. "You lied to me. I protected them from you. There's a difference." The truth of it crushed Blake. She was right. If she'd told him what she was doing from the start, he would have fired her, would have stopped her, would have stolen this miracle from his own children. "I'm sorry," Blake whispered. "God, Maria, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me." Maria's eyes were hard. "Apologize to them. They're the ones who fought for this while you hid behind your cameras." Blake nodded. She was right, about all of it. Maria walked past him to where Jackson and Madison were waiting. "Good morning, sweet babies. Ready to practice?" Both twins lit up at her voice. Jackson reached for her. Madison smiled. Blake watched Maria work with them. The gentle way she encouraged them. The absolute certainty in her voice that they could do this. She'd never doubted them, not once. While Blake had given up before he even started, Maria had been fighting. Every single day. Alone. After an hour, Maria stood up. "Break time. Let me get them some water." She left the room. Blake knelt down in front of his children. Jackson looked at him with those bright eyes. Madison gripped his finger. "I'm sorry I wasn't here," Blake said. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. I'm sorry I let my fear matter more than your future." Jackson made a sound, reached for Blake's face. Blake took his son's hands. "But I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again, I promise." He meant it. Every word. Whatever it took. Whatever he had to sacrifice. His company. His wealth. His pride. None of it mattered compared to this. Maria came back with water bottles. She paused when she saw Blake still kneeling with the twins. Something in her expression softened. "Are you staying for the whole session today?" Blake nodded. "Every session. From now on." Maria smiled. A real smile. "Good. They've been waiting for you." Blake's eyes burned. "I know. I'm sorry it took me so long." That afternoon, Blake canceled every meeting for the next month. His assistant protested. His board threatened. His investors demanded explanations. Blake ignored all of them. He had 2 children who were learning to walk. Nothing else mattered. If this is destroying you emotionally, good. That means you have a heart. Smash that like button. Tell me in the comments, has anyone ever believed in you when you stopped believing in yourself? Write their name, honor them, and subscribe. Because what Blake discovers next on those cameras will leave you speechless. 2 months passed. Jackson could walk 15 steps before his legs gave out. Madison could walk 10. Both could say basic words. Mama, Dada, Maria, more. Blake spent every waking hour with them. The CEO who once ran a billion-dollar empire now sat on playroom floors helping his children learn to stand. His board voted him out. Blake didn't fight it. He signed the papers without reading them. Money didn't build this miracle. Love did. But something was changing. Blake saw it in Maria's face. She smiled less. Looked tired, distracted. One evening, Blake found her crying in the hallway. "Maria? What's wrong?" She wiped her eyes fast. "Nothing. I'm fine." Blake didn't push, but he watched the cameras that night. Maria sat alone in the playroom after her shift ended. She held a letter in her hands, read it over and over, then she put her head down and sobbed. Blake's chest tightened. Something was wrong. The next morning, he asked her directly, "Maria, what's going on? You can tell me." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "My mother. She's sick. In Mexico. Stage 4 cancer. She has maybe 3 months." Blake felt his stomach drop. "I'm so sorry. I need to go back. Be with her. But I can't leave Jackson and Madison right now. They're so close." Maria's voice broke. "They're so close to walking independently." Blake understood immediately. Maria was trapped between 2 impossible choices. "Go to your mother," Blake said. "I'll handle things here." "You don't understand." Maria shook her head. "They need consistency. They need someone who believes. If I leave now, they might regress. All this progress could disappear. Then, we'll make sure it doesn't." Blake's voice was firm. "Your mother is dying. You need to be with her. I won't let you miss that." Maria looked at him. Really looked at him. "You've changed, Mr. Hartwell." Blake nodded. "You changed me. Now let me help you." That afternoon, Blake bought Maria a plane ticket to Mexico. First class. Open return. He also wired $50,000 to cover her mother's medical bills. Maria cried when she saw the bank transfer. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can." Blake's voice was gentle. "You gave my children their lives back. Let me help save your mothers." Maria left the next day. Blake was terrified. What if she was right? What if the twins regressed without her? But he'd made a promise. He would believe. He would fight. He would not give up. That first week without Maria was brutal. Jackson cried every night. Madison barely ate. Both kept looking for Maria, waiting for her voice. Blake pushed through. He did everything Maria had taught him. The exercises, the encouragement, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. And slowly, the twins adjusted. Jackson walked 20 steps, then 25, then 30. Madison started forming full sentences, short ones, but real sentences. Blake filmed everything, sent videos to Maria every day. She sent back voice messages, crying, thanking him, telling him how proud she was. Her mother was declining fast. The doctors gave her weeks now, maybe days. Blake told Maria to stay as long as she needed, promised the twins would be fine. But at night, alone in his office, Blake watched the old footage. Maria singing to the twins. Maria believing in them when no one else would. Maria giving everything she had to children who weren't even hers. And Blake realized something that made his chest ache. He was in love with her. Not the desperate love of loneliness, but the deep love of respect, of gratitude, of recognizing someone who made you want to be better. Maria had saved his children, but she'd also saved Blake. She'd taught him how to hope again, how to fight, how to be the father Charlotte had always believed he could be. Blake didn't know what to do with this feeling. Maria was an employee. She was grieving. This wasn't the time. But the feeling was there anyway. Real and undeniable. 3 weeks after Maria left, she called. Blake answered immediately. "How's your mother? She passed this morning." Maria's voice was hollow, peaceful. She wasn't in pain at the end. "I'm so sorry." Blake's throat was tight. "Are you okay?" "No, but I will be." Maria was quiet for a moment. "How are Jackson and Madison?" Blake pulled up the live camera feed. "They're amazing. They're walking all over the playroom, talking in sentences. They miss you, but they're thriving. Because of you, Mr. Hartwell." Maria's voice broke. "You finally became the father they needed." Blake closed his eyes. "Come home, Maria. When you're ready. Come home." "I will. I promise." She hung up. Blake sat in the silence, wondering if she'd really come back, wondering if maybe she'd realize she'd given enough, done enough, wondering if he'd ever get the chance to tell her what she meant to him. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. Blake opened it. Maria stood there. Her eyes were red from crying. Her face was exhausted, but she smiled when she saw him. "I came home," she said simply. Blake wanted to pull her into his arms, tell her everything he felt. Instead, he stepped aside. "They've been waiting for you." Maria walked into the playroom. Jackson and Madison screamed with joy. Maria dropped to her knees. Both twins ran to her. Actually ran. Maria caught them, held them, sobbed into their hair. "I missed you so much. I missed you both so much." Blake stood in the doorway watching. His heart was breaking and healing at the same time. This woman had lost her mother, had sacrificed everything, and the first thing she did was come back to his children. Blake knew in that moment he would spend the rest of his life making sure Maria never regretted that choice. If you're not crying, you're lying. Hit that like button if this story is wrecking you. Comment and tell me what family means to you. Real family, not just blood. and subscribe because the next chapter reveals something that will break Blake's heart all over again. Maria moved back into her routine like she'd never left. But something was different now. Blake saw it in the way she looked at him. Less like an employer, more like an equal. They worked together with the twins every day, side by side, building something neither of them had expected. A family. One evening, after the twins were asleep, Blake found Maria in the kitchen making tea. "Can we talk?" Blake asked. Maria nodded, sat down at the table. Blake sat across from her. His heart was pounding. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Okay?" "Okay." Blake took a breath. "When Charlotte died, I died with her. I buried myself so deep in grief that I forgot how to live. I looked at Jackson and Madison, and all I saw was everything I'd lost, everything I'd failed at." Maria stayed quiet, listening. "Then, you came, and you saw what I couldn't see. You believed when I wouldn't believe. You fought for my children when I'd given up on them." Blake's voice cracked. "You saved them, Maria. You saved all of us." Tears slipped down Maria's face. "I don't know how to thank you for that," Blake continued. "I don't know how to repay what you've given. But I need you to know something. These past months, watching you, learning from you, I've realized something I wasn't looking for." Blake met her eyes. "I'm in love with you." Maria's breath caught. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you just lost your mother. I know I'm your employer and this is complicated and maybe inappropriate, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Blake's hands were shaking. "You don't have to feel the same way. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." Maria was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. Blake stood up. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "I love you too," Maria whispered. Blake froze. Maria stood up, walked around the table, stood in front of him. "I've loved you for months, Mr. Hartwell, since the day you finally walked into that playroom and saw your children for who they really are." Maria's voice was soft, strong. "I've loved you every day since." Blake couldn't breathe. "Really?" "Really." Maria smiled through her tears. I just didn't think I was allowed to feel it." Blake reached out, touched her face, wiped away her tears. Then he kissed her. Gentle, careful, like she was something precious he'd been trusted to protect. Maria kissed him back, her hands gripping his shirt, her whole body trembling. When they pulled apart, Blake rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. Maria laughed, cried. "What?" "Marry me. Be their mother. Be my wife." Blake pulled back to look at her. "I know it's fast. I know it's crazy, but I don't want to waste another second of my life not being honest about what I want, and I want you. Forever." Maria's eyes searched his face. "You're serious. Completely serious." Maria's smile broke wide open. "Yes. God, yes." Blake pulled her close, held her like she might disappear if he let go. This woman who'd walked into his house a stranger and left him transformed. This woman who'd given his children a future and given Blake a reason to believe in miracles again. She was his now, and he was hers. 6 months later, they got married in the garden. Jackson and Madison were the ring bearers. They walked down the aisle on their own. No wheelchairs, no support. Blake cried through the entire ceremony. So did every guest. Maria wore a simple white dress. She looked like an angel. When the minister asked if Blake took Maria as his wife, Blake's voice was clear, strong. "I do. God, I do." Maria became Maria Hartwell that day, and Jackson and Madison finally had the mother they'd always deserved. But Blake's happiness was about to be shattered, because that night, Blake went to his office one last time. He wanted to watch the footage from the wedding, capture every moment, but he made a mistake. He clicked on the wrong date, pulled up footage from months ago, from before Maria left for Mexico, and what he saw destroyed him. Maria wasn't just working with the twins during her shifts. She was coming back at night, after Blake went to bed, after everyone was asleep. The footage showed her sneaking into the playroom at 2 in the morning, working with Jackson and Madison for hours, then leaving before dawn. Blake scrolled back further. Week after week, month after month, Maria had been training the twins around the clock, sacrificing her own sleep, her own health, her own life. She'd been doing double shifts without pay, without recognition, without Blake even knowing. Blake's hands covered his face. The weight of it crushed him. While he'd been watching cameras looking for betrayal, Maria had been killing herself to save his children. While he'd been drowning in self-pity, Maria had been working miracles in the dark. Blake pulled up more footage. Saw Maria crying alone in her car after shifts, saw her collapsing from exhaustion in the hallway, saw her praying over the twins while they slept. She'd given everything, literally everything, and Blake had almost fired her a dozen times. He sat in that office until sunrise, watching every moment he'd missed, every sacrifice Maria had made. When Maria found him the next morning, Blake was still at his desk. His face was destroyed. "What's wrong?" Maria rushed to him. "Blake, what happened?" Blake turned the laptop toward her, showed her the footage. Maria's face went pale. "Why didn't you tell me?" Blake's voice broke. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing?" "Because you didn't need to know." Maria's voice was quiet. "They needed help. I could give it. That's all that mattered. You were killing yourself for them. They're worth it." Maria met his eyes. They were always worth it. Blake stood up, pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she gasped. "I don't deserve you," he whispered into her hair. "I don't deserve any of this." "Yes, you do." Maria held him back. "You learned to believe. That's all they ever needed from you." But outside that office, something else was happening. Something that would test everything they'd built. Jackson had collapsed in the playroom. His small body was seizing. Madison was screaming, and no one heard them yet. Listen, if you've watched this far and haven't liked this video, what are you even doing? Hit that like button right now. Comment and tell me, have you ever had someone love you when you didn't deserve it? Who was it? Say their name. Honor them. And if you're not subscribed, you're missing out on the most emotional ending you'll ever see. Subscribe now, because what happens in the next chapter will leave you speechless. The screaming reached Blake first. He ran from his office. Maria was right behind him. They burst into the playroom. Madison was on the floor sobbing. Jackson was convulsing, his small body jerking violently. Blake's world tilted. No, 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 no. Maria dropped to her knees beside Jackson. She rolled him on his side, checked his airway. Her hands were steady even though her face was terrified. "Call 911, she said. "Now." Blake couldn't move. He was frozen, watching his son's body twist and shake. "Blake." Maria's voice cut through. "Call 911. Blake grabbed his phone. His hands shook so badly he could barely dial. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. It felt like 8 hours. The paramedics loaded Jackson onto a stretcher. Maria climbed in beside him. Blake scooped up Madison and followed. At the hospital, doctors swarmed. Tests, scans, questions. Blake couldn't answer. Maria held Jackson's hand the entire time, whispered to him, told him he was brave, told him he'd be okay. Blake stood against the wall holding Madison. His daughter clung to him, her face buried in his neck. After 2 hours, a doctor came out. "Mr. Hartwell, we need to talk." Blake's legs nearly gave out. "Is he okay?" "He's stable. But we found something concerning." The doctor pulled up a scan on his tablet. "Jackson has a brain lesion we didn't catch before. It's been there since birth, likely related to his cerebral palsy." Blake's chest went cold. What does that mean? It means the seizure wasn't random. It'll happen again. The doctor's face was serious, and as Jackson grows, as his brain develops, the seizures will get worse, more frequent, more severe. Blake couldn't breathe. "Can you fix it?" We can manage it with medication." But surgery is risky at his age. The lesion is near critical areas. One wrong move and Jackson could lose motor function entirely. Everything he's gained, he'd lose. Blake felt the floor disappear beneath him. So we do nothing? Maria's voice was sharp. We just let him seize, we medicate, we monitor, and we hope. The doctor looked between them. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you want to hear. He walked away. Blake slid down the wall, sat on the cold hospital floor, Madison still in his arms. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after everything. Maria sat beside him, took his hand. We'll figure this out, she said. Blake shook his head. What if we can't? What if all that progress, all that work was for nothing? It wasn't for nothing. Maria's grip tightened. Jackson learned to walk. That's real. No one can take that away from him, but he might lose it anyway. Then we'll teach him again. Maria's voice was fierce. As many times as it takes. Blake looked at her. How are you so strong? Because I have to be. For them. For you. Maria's eyes were wet but determined. We don't give up. Not now, not ever. Jackson was released 3 days later, with medications, with warnings, with a future that suddenly felt fragile again. Blake carried him into the house, laid him in his bed, watched him sleep. Maria stood in the doorway. He's still here, Blake. He's still fighting. Blake nodded, but the fear was eating him alive. That night, Blake went back to his office, back to the cameras, back to the only place he felt like he had control. He watched footage of Jackson walking, laughing, playing, and he watched footage of Jackson seizing, his small body breaking. Blake's phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Hello? Mr. Hartwell? This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Johns Hopkins. I've been following your son's case. I think I can help. Blake sat up straight. What? The lesion in Jackson's brain. I've seen cases like this before. There's an experimental procedure, new technology. It's risky, but it might work. Blake's heart pounded. What are the risks? There's a 30% chance Jackson loses all motor function. A 10% chance of death. Dr. Chen paused. But there's a 60% chance we remove the lesion completely. No more seizures, no more medication. He'd be free. Blake couldn't think, couldn't process. When would this happen? We'd need to schedule soon, before the next seizure. The doctor's voice was calm. But Mr. Hartwell, you need to understand. This is a gamble. You could lose everything you fought for. Or we could save him. Yes, or you could save him. Blake hung up, stared at the wall. 30% chance Jackson never walks again. 10% chance he dies. But 60% chance he's cured. Blake thought about Charlotte. What would she do? She'd fight. She'd always fight. Blake found Maria in the twins' room, told her everything. Maria listened. Her face went pale. That's a huge risk, I know. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes right? Blake's voice cracked. What if we can actually save him, Maria? Really save him? Maria looked at Jackson sleeping peacefully, then at Madison beside him. It's your choice, she said finally. I'll support whatever you decide. Blake knelt beside Jackson's bed, brushed hair from his son's forehead, the boy who wasn't supposed to walk, who'd defied every doctor, every statistic, the boy who'd taught Blake how to hope again. Blake made his decision. He'd gamble everything, one more time, for Jackson, for the future, for the miracle they'd already built, and pray to God it didn't all come crashing down. Blake scheduled the surgery for 2 weeks out. Those 14 days were torture. Every moment with Jackson felt precious. Fragile. Possibly the last. Blake didn't sleep. Barely ate. Just watched his son. Memorized every laugh, every step, every word. Maria was stronger. She kept the routine going. Kept the twins engaged. Kept hope alive even when Blake was drowning in fear. The night before surgery, Blake sat alone with Jackson. The boy was asleep, his small chest rising and falling. So peaceful. So unaware of what was coming. I'm scared, buddy, Blake whispered. I'm so scared I'm making the wrong choice. But I can't watch you suffer. I can't watch those seizures steal you away piece by piece. Jackson stirred. His eyes opened. He looked at his father. Dada, he said clearly. Blake's throat closed. Yeah, buddy, I'm here. Love you. 3 words. Simple words. Words that destroyed Blake completely. I love you too, son. So much. Blake held Jackson's hand. You're the bravest person I know. And tomorrow, you're going to be even braver. Jackson smiled, then went back to sleep. Blake stayed there all night, watching, praying, begging God for mercy. The next morning, they drove to Johns Hopkins. The surgery was scheduled for noon. Blake carried Jackson into the hospital. Maria held Madison. The little girl was crying. She understood something bad was happening. In the pre-op room, Blake held Jackson until the last possible second. The anesthesiologist came. Time to go, Mr. Hartwell. Blake kissed his son's forehead. You've got this, buddy. I'll see you soon. Jackson was rolled away. Blake watched until he disappeared through the doors. Then Blake collapsed, right there in the hallway. His knees hit the floor. His body shook with sobs. Maria sat beside him, pulled him close, let him break. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 hours of Blake pacing, praying, falling apart. Maria stayed calm. She had to. For Madison, for Blake, for Jackson. Finally, Dr. Chen appeared. Her face was unreadable. Blake stood up, his whole body trembling. Is he alive? Dr. Chen smiled. He's alive. And the surgery was successful. Blake's legs gave out again. Maria caught him. We removed the lesion completely, Dr. Chen continued. No complications. He'll need time to recover, but all initial signs are positive. His motor function? Blake could barely speak. We won't know for certain until he wakes up. But I'm optimistic. Dr. Chen's smile widened. Your son is a fighter, Mr. Hartwell. Blake couldn't respond, just sobbed into Maria's shoulder. Jackson woke up 4 hours later. Blake and Maria were at his bedside. Madison was asleep in Maria's arms. Jackson's eyes opened, looked around, confused, scared. Hey, buddy, Blake whispered. You're okay. You did so good. Jackson's mouth moved, trying to speak. Blake held his breath. Dada, Jackson said. His voice was weak but clear. Then Jackson lifted his hand, reached for Blake's face. His hand moved on command, full motor control. Blake grabbed his son's hand, kissed it. Thank you, God. Thank you. Jackson smiled, then closed his eyes and went back to sleep. Dr. Chen was right. Jackson recovered fast. Within days he was walking again. Within a week he was running. The seizures never came back. The medications were stopped. Jackson was free. Blake had gambled everything, and he'd won. But that night, alone in his office, Blake made a decision. He pulled up every piece of security footage from the past 2 years, every moment, every file, and he deleted it all. No more watching life through screens. No more hiding. No more fear. Blake Hartwell was done living in the past. He was ready for the future, a future with Maria, with Jackson, with Madison, a future built on belief, on hope, on love. The cameras stayed installed. But Blake never watched them again, because the best moments in life weren't meant to be recorded. They were meant to be lived. 1 year later, Blake stood in the backyard watching Jackson and Madison chase each other across the grass, running, laughing, screaming with joy. 2 children who weren't supposed to walk were now racing like the wind. Maria came up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, rested her head on his back. What are you thinking about? She asked. Blake turned to face her. Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am. We're all lucky. Maria smiled. Look at them. Jackson tackled Madison in the grass. Both kids rolled around giggling. Their voices filled the entire yard. Blake's chest felt full, like it might burst. 2 years ago, this house was a tomb. Now it was alive. But something was still missing. Blake felt it. A weight he'd been carrying since Charlotte died. He'd never properly said goodbye. That night, after the twins were asleep, Blake drove to the cemetery alone. He stood in front of Charlotte's grave, the first time he'd visited in over a year. "Hey," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I haven't been here. I'm sorry for a lot of things." The night was silent, just Blake and the headstone, and 2 years of buried grief. "I was so angry at you for leaving," Blake continued, "angry at God, angry at the world. I blamed everyone, including myself, including the twins." His voice cracked. "I looked at Jackson and Madison, and all I saw was what they cost me. What loving them cost me. And I hated myself for feeling that way." Blake sat down on the grass, tears streaming down his face. "But Maria taught me something. She taught me that love doesn't cost. It multiplies. The more you give, the more you have." He pulled out his phone. I showed Charlotte's picture on the headstone, a video of the twins running. "Look at them, Charlotte. They're walking. They're talking. They're everything you dreamed they'd be." Blake's shoulders shook. "I wish you were here to see it. I wish you could meet Maria. You'd love her. She's strong like you. Fierce like you. She believed in them when I couldn't." The wind picked up, rustled through the trees. "I'm happy now." Blake wiped his eyes. "For the first time since you left, I'm actually happy, and I feel guilty about that. Like I'm betraying you by moving on. But I know you wouldn't want that. You'd want me to live, to love, to give our children the life you fought so hard to give them." Blake stood up, placed his hand on the headstone. "So I'm saying goodbye, Charlotte. Not to your memory, not to what we had, but to the grief that's been drowning me. I'm letting it go." He took a deep breath. "Thank you for Jackson and Madison. Thank you for fighting for them. And thank you for sending Maria to save us when I couldn't save myself." Blake kissed his fingers, pressed them to Charlotte's name. Then he walked back to his car, back to his life, back to the future he'd almost thrown away. When he got home, Maria was waiting up. She took one look at his face and knew. "You went to see her," Maria said. Blake nodded. "I needed to say goodbye." Maria hugged him. "I'm glad. Are you okay with this?" Blake pulled back to look at her. "With me loving her and loving you? Love doesn't divide, Blake." Maria's eyes were soft. "It multiplies, remember?" Blake kissed her forehead. "How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't get lucky. You chose to fight." Maria smiled. That's different." That night, Blake slept peacefully for the first time in years. No nightmares, no guilt, no cameras to check, just peace. But the next morning, something happened that changed everything again. Blake was making breakfast when the doorbell rang. He opened it to find a woman standing there. Mid-50s, expensive clothes, familiar face. Blake's stomach dropped. "Hello, Blake," she said coldly. "I'm Charlotte's mother, and I'm here for my grandchildren." Blake's world tilted. Charlotte's mother? He'd never met her. Charlotte had been estranged from her family for years. "What are you talking about?" The woman handed him legal papers. "I'm suing for custody. Those children belong with family. Real family. Not some gold-digging maid you married." Blake's hands shook as he read the documents. This was real. She was actually suing him. You can't do this." "I already did." The woman's smile was cruel. "See you in court, Blake." She walked away. Blake stood frozen in the doorway, the papers heavy in his hands. Everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, it was all about to be ripped away. Maria appeared beside him. "What's wrong?" Blake couldn't speak, just handed her the papers. Maria read them. Her face went white. "They can't take them," she whispered. "Blake, they can't take our babies." Blake pulled her close. "I won't let them. I swear to God I won't let them." But inside, Blake was terrified, because Charlotte's mother was rich, connected, powerful, and Blake had spent 2 years being an absent father. What if the court sided with her? What if they decided Blake wasn't fit? What if they took Jackson and Madison away? Blake looked at the twins playing in the living room, oblivious, happy. He'd die before he let anyone take them. But this wasn't a fight he could win with money or power. This was a fight for his family, and Blake didn't know if he was strong enough to win it. If this story has you hooked, prove it. Smash that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, would you fight for your family no matter what? Tell me about a time you had to fight for someone you love, and subscribe, because the custody battle that's about to unfold will absolutely wreck you. You don't want to miss what happens next. The lawyer Blake hired was the best in the state. She sat across from him in her office reviewing the case. Her face was grim. "This isn't good, Mr. Hartwell." She looked up from the papers. "Charlotte's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, is using your absence against you. The first 2 years of the twins' lives you weren't present. She has medical records showing you missed therapy appointments, statements from former caregivers about your detachment." Blake felt sick. "I was grieving. The court won't care." The lawyer leaned back. "They'll care that a hired caregiver had to step in and do what you should have been doing, and now you've married that caregiver. Eleanor is painting this as you abandoning your children, and Maria taking advantage. That's not what happened. I believe you, but the facts look bad." The lawyer tapped her pen on the desk. "Eleanor has witnesses, documentation, and she's Charlotte's mother, blood relative. The courts favor family. I'm their father." Blake's voice was hard. "I'm their family. Then we need to prove it. Show the court you've changed, that you're present now, that Jackson and Madison are thriving under your care." "How?" "Character witnesses, medical records showing their progress, testimony from therapists, doctors, teachers. We build a case that shows those children are better off with you." Blake nodded. Whatever it takes." The lawyer hesitated. "There's one more thing. Eleanor is claiming Maria is unfit, that she's not qualified to be a mother figure. She's digging into Maria's background. Let her dig." Blake's jaw clenched. "She won't find anything. Maria is the best thing that ever happened to those kids. I hope you're right. Because if Eleanor finds anything at all, she'll use it to destroy you both." Blake left the office feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. At home, Maria was helping the twins with homework. Jackson was writing his name. Madison was doing simple math. Both children looked happy, healthy, loved. Blake couldn't lose them. He wouldn't survive it. That night, Blake and Maria sat down with the twins. "Jackson, Madison, we need to talk to you about something," Blake said gently. Both kids looked up. Curious, eyes trusting. "There's a woman who wants you to come live with her. She's your mommy Charlotte's mother, your grandmother." Madison's face scrunched up. "Don't want to go." "You're not going anywhere," Maria said firmly. "We promise." But Blake knew he couldn't promise that. The court would decide, not him. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Those 21 days were hell. Blake documented everything. Every meal, every therapy session, every moment of joy. He collected letters from doctors, from teachers, from neighbors who'd watched Jackson and Madison transform. Maria did the same. She gathered her own documentation, proof of her qualifications, testimonials from other families she'd worked with. But Eleanor was building her case too. 1 week before the hearing, Blake got a call from his lawyer. "We have a problem." Her voice was tight. Eleanor found something. Blake's blood went cold. "What?" "Maria was arrested 6 years ago. Public intoxication. The charges were dropped, but it's on her record." Blake felt like he'd been shot. "Maria never mentioned this." "Did you know?" the lawyer asked. "No." Blake hung up. "Went to find Maria. She was in the garden with the twins. Can we talk?" Blake's voice was strained. Alone? Maria saw his face. Her expression shifted. She called Mrs. Chen to watch the kids. In Blake's office, he closed the door. Were you arrested 6 years ago? Blake asked quietly. Maria's face went pale. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because it was the worst night of my life, and I wanted to forget it. Maria's voice shook. My brother died. I was 23. I got drunk. I made a mistake. The charges were dropped. Blake ran his hands through his hair. Eleanor found it. She's going to use it against us. Maria sat down. Tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. Blake's voice was harder than he meant. Now they're going to paint you as an alcoholic, as someone unfit to raise my children. I'm not an alcoholic. Maria looked at him. One mistake 6 years ago doesn't define me. The court might not see it that way. Then we'll make them see it. Maria stood up. I'm not losing those kids, Blake. I don't care what Eleanor throws at us. Blake wanted to believe her, but fear was eating him alive. What if this was the thing that cost them everything? The custody hearing arrived too fast. Blake, Maria, and their lawyer sat on one side of the courtroom. Eleanor and her team sat on the other. The judge was a woman in her 60s, stern face. No-nonsense demeanor. Eleanor's lawyer went first. Painted a picture of Blake as a negligent father, Maria as an opportunistic gold digger, the twins as victims who deserved better. They showed photos of Jackson and Madison in wheelchairs from 2 years ago, argued that Blake had abandoned them in their greatest time of need. Then they brought up Maria's arrest, made it sound like she was a dangerous drunk. Blake watched the judge's face, couldn't read her expression. When it was their turn, Blake's lawyer presented their case. Medical records showing Jackson and Madison's miraculous progress. Letters from doctors praising Blake and Maria. Videos of the twins running, playing, thriving. Then Maria took the stand. Ms. Hartwell, Eleanor's lawyer said with contempt, tell us about your arrest. Maria's voice was steady. 6 years ago, my brother was killed in a car accident. I was devastated. I made a poor choice and got drunk in public. I was arrested. The charges were dropped. I haven't touched alcohol since. So you're an alcoholic? No, I made one mistake in the worst moment of my life. That doesn't make me an alcoholic, but it makes you unfit to raise children, doesn't it? No. Maria's eyes blazed. What makes me fit to raise those children is that I love them. I fought for them every single day. I believed in them when no one else would. One mistake 6 years ago doesn't erase that. The lawyer smirked. No further questions. Then Blake took the stand. Eleanor's lawyer attacked him, called him absent, negligent, selfish. Blake didn't defend himself, just spoke the truth. You're right, I was absent. I was drowning in grief and I failed my children. But Maria saved them. She saved all of us, and I've spent every day since trying to be the father they deserve. The courtroom was silent. Then, the judge spoke. I need to see the children. Blake's heart stopped. What? I want to speak with Jackson and Madison. Privately. The judge's voice was firm. Bring them in. Jackson and Madison were brought into the judge's chambers. Blake's heart was in his throat. What would they say? They were only 4 years old. What if they got confused? What if Eleanor had somehow gotten to them? The judge knelt down to their level. Her stern face softened. Hello, Jackson. Hello, Madison. I'm Judge Morrison. I just want to talk to you for a little bit. Is that okay? Both twins nodded. Do you know why you're here today? Madison spoke first. Her voice was small but clear. Someone wants to take us away from Daddy and Mama Maria? The judge's eyebrows raised. How does that make you feel? Scared, Jackson said. His lip trembled. Oh, we don't want to go. Tell me about your daddy, the judge said gently. Jackson's face lit up. Daddy plays with us every day. He helps us walk. He reads us stories. He makes funny voices. Madison nodded enthusiastically. and he makes pancakes on Saturdays. They're really good. What about Maria? Mama Maria is the best, Madison said. She sings to us. She teaches us stuff. She loves us. Jackson grabbed the judge's hand. Please don't take us away. We're happy. We promise we're happy. Blake watched through the window, tears streaming down his face. Maria gripped his hand so tight it hurt. The judge talked to the twins for 20 more minutes, asked about their home, their routines, their dreams. Then she sent them back out. The courtroom reconvened. Everyone sat, waiting. Judge Morrison looked at the papers in front of her, then at Eleanor, then at Blake and Maria. This is a difficult case. The judge's voice filled the room. I've heard compelling arguments from both sides. Blake couldn't breathe. Mrs. Whitmore, you are Charlotte's mother. You have every right to want a relationship with your grandchildren, but the court's priority is what's best for Jackson and Madison, not what's convenient for adults. Eleanor's face tightened. The judge continued. 2 years ago, Mr. Hartwell was not the father those children needed. The records show that clearly. But people can change. And the evidence before me shows that Mr. Hartwell has changed dramatically. Blake's hands were shaking. Jackson and Madison have made extraordinary progress under their father's care and under the care of Mrs. Maria Hartwell. They are thriving. They are loved. They are happy. The judge looked directly at Eleanor. Your concerns about Ms. Hartwell's past are noted, but one mistake 6 years ago does not outweigh years of dedicated, loving care. The children themselves have made it abundantly clear where they want to be. Eleanor stood up. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Mrs. Whitmore. The judge's voice was sharp. I'm not finished. Eleanor sat. It is the decision of this court that Jackson and Madison Hartwell remain in the custody of their father, Blake Hartwell, and his wife, Maria Hartwell. The judge slammed her gavel. Case dismissed. Blake collapsed. Maria caught him. They held each other and sobbed. Eleanor stormed out of the courtroom. Her lawyers followed. Blake and Maria ran to Jackson and Madison, scooped them up, held them. You're staying with us, Blake said through tears. You're staying forever. Both twins wrapped their arms around their parents, all 4 of them crying, laughing, holding on. The lawyer smiled, packed up her briefcase, gave Blake a nod. They'd won. Against all odds, they'd won. That night, Blake sat in the backyard watching the stars. Maria came out and sat beside him. The twins were asleep inside. Safe. Home. We did it, she whispered. No. Blake took her hand. You did it. You saved them. You saved me. We saved each other. Maria leaned her head on his shoulder. Blake thought about everything. Charlotte, the diagnosis, the failed caregivers, Maria walking through his door, the cameras, the belief, the hope, the fight. All of it led here, to this moment, to this family. I love you, Blake said. I love you so much. I love you too. They sat in silence, holding hands, watching the stars. Inside, Jackson stirred, got out of bed, walked on his own 2 feet to the window. He saw his parents outside, saw them together, safe. He smiled, then walked back to bed. No wheelchair, no help needed. Just a little boy who'd proven the impossible was possible. Just a little boy who'd been loved back to life. 6 months later, Blake and Maria stood in a conference room full of doctors. The same doctors who'd given up on Jackson and Madison 2 years ago. Blake had invited them here, wanted them to see what belief could do. Jackson and Madison ran into the room, playing tag, laughing. The doctors stood in shock. How is this possible? One of them asked. Blake looked at Maria, then back at the doctors. You told me it was impossible. You told me to give up hope. You told me my children would never walk. The room was silent. But someone refused to believe you. Blake put his arm around Maria. Someone saw what you couldn't see. And she taught me to see it too. The doctors had no words. Jackson ran up to the doctor who'd delivered the original diagnosis, tugged on his coat. "Hi," Jackson said brightly. "Wanna play?" The doctor's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong." Blake nodded. "You were, but you're forgiven." The doctors left humbled, changed. Blake hoped they'd never give up on another family again. That night, Blake went to his office one last time. He looked at the computer where he used to watch the cameras obsessively. He opened the drawer. I pulled out the hard drive with all the deleted footage. He'd kept one copy, just in case. But he didn't need it anymore. Blake walked outside, threw the hard drive into the fire pit, watched it burn. All those wasted hours, all that fear, all that surveillance, gone. Maria came outside. "What are you burning?" "The past," Blake said simply. She smiled, took his hand. Together they watched the flames, watched the past turn to ash, and from those ashes something beautiful had grown. A family, a real family, built on belief and love and hope. Jackson and Madison ran outside. They'd been drawing pictures. "Look what we made," Madison said. She held up a drawing. 4 stick figures, holding hands, smiling. "That's us," Jackson said proudly. "Our family." Blake took the drawing, his vision blurred. "It's perfect, buddy. It's absolutely perfect." That drawing went on the refrigerator, where it stayed for years. A reminder of what they'd overcome, what they'd built, what they'd become. Blake Hartwell had everything now, not because of his money or power, but because he'd learned to believe. He'd learned to hope. He'd learned to love without fear, and most importantly, he'd learned that the impossible was only impossible until someone proved it wasn't. Jackson and Madison grew up strong, healthy, happy. They never forgot what they'd overcome, never took a single step for granted. Blake and Maria grew old together, watching their children grow, watching them thrive. And every night, Blake thanked God for the day Maria walked through his door. The day everything changed, the day he learned that miracles were real. You just had to believe in them. Listen, if you've made it this far, you're part of something special. This story isn't just about Blake or Maria or Jackson and Madison. It's about all of us. It's about never giving up on the people we love. It's about believing when the world tells you to quit. It's about fighting for miracles even when they seem impossible. So I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Not just because you enjoyed this story, but because you believe in hope, because you believe in second chances, because you believe love can change everything. Then drop a comment. Tell me who believed in you when you stopped believing in yourself. Tell me who your Maria is. Tell me who fought for you. Say their name. Honor them. Let the world know. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to this channel, because there are millions of stories out there just like this one. Stories of people who refuse to give up. Stories of love conquering impossible odds. Stories that will remind you why life is worth fighting for. Share this video with someone who needs hope today, someone who's fighting their own battle, someone who needs to be reminded that miracles are real. And before you go, check out the other videos on this channel. Every single one is designed to inspire you, to move you, to remind you that you're capable of more than you know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. Now go out there and be someone's Maria. Be someone's miracle. Be the person who refuses to give up. Because the world needs more people like that. The world needs more believers. See you in the next video.